Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I am joined here, as always, by the man who's very jealous that he does not have a bunch of Super Bowl championship swag like I do with the hat and also the T-shirt. Kyle, how are you doing?
I am cold. It is snowing a lot in Texas. I don't like this. I'm not used to this anymore, not having lived up north for quite a while. So I'm not a fan of this. And just got to say that real quick.
I just love the idea of you calling Texas up north.
No, I'm saying I haven't lived up north in a while. That's why I'm not used to the cold anymore.
Gotcha.
But, yeah, I mean, I'm with you, though. I haven't had Super Bowl merch in a while. It must be nice.
Yeah, it's been a rough time for you. So we have a fun show. It's the off season. We're going to be doing a show every week. We plan on finding something, and I figured perfect way to cap off 2020 by talking about our worst takes. So I have a top 10 worst take. I've gone through. I've went back, watched the tapes, got the 10 worst take. I'll be honest. I think it's a bit Kyle centric, but there's definitely a good amount of me on there as well.
Wow, you're just exposing me here. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
All right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's just jump into it. We'll start off with number 10. Number 10 is a Jackson worst take. This one I played on the show before. Let's just show it. I'm very frustrated about this loss. I still think we're a playoff team, but let's just be honest. This isn't a Super Bowl team. Yes, not a Super Bowl team. That was referring to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Nailed it.
Yeah, you got that one right on. Bucks couldn't win the Super Bowl this year with that roster.
Yes. In fairness to me, though, I feel like that team, after the Saints loss, wasn't a Super Bowl team. They became a Super Bowl team.
No, it's a completely different team. I agree, but funny to look at in hindsight.
Yes, and I think that's where a good amount of some of these I think are going to be ones that I feel like are defensible. Some of these maybe not defensible. The number 10 and 9 I both put here are kind of takes that they were during our recent reaction show, like the Sunday night, and I feel like that's where we really got some. We had some overreactions, perhaps. I think that's a good lead in to number 9. This is one of yours, Kyle.
So, bold take of the week.
Okay.
The Cardinals might be the best team in the NFC.
That is bold. That is bold. That is very bold. Yes, a very bold take by you. In fairness, you knew it was bold going in.
Yeah, I did call it a bold take. Look, there were weeks when that offense looked truly unstoppable. The problem with the Cardinals this year was whether it was Kingsbury, whether it was part of the roster being dependent on basically two guys supplying a lot of the stuff. It was a team that basically could look explosive at times, but wasn't consistent enough. And that, fits their, what were they, 8-8? So, I mean, it fits their record, 7-9, 8-8, that, they just weren't consistent enough. I think they can get really good here pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing how you gave that take and then it lost like 5 straight.
Yeah, I know. Okay. That was after the Bills game, wasn't it?
Yeah. Exactly. That was little did we know that would end up being the highlight of the Cardinals season.
Yeah.
All right. So number 8 right here. Let's get into it.
So I am going to go with the Las Vegas Raiders at 4th.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Not pulling any punches here.
Like I said, I don't think there's any bad team in this division either. I don't think there's any first-round pick candidates. I think the worst team in this division could end up 6-10, 7-9 potentially. And unfortunately, at this point, I think I'm willing to bet that that's going to be the Raiders.
Okay. Well, you're wrong and stupid.
Okay.
That was just me being the comments that's going to come in. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, no. Thank you for being negative towards the Raiders because it'll make everyone love me just that much more. So that's always nice. So appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm just looking out for you. That's what it was.
Exactly. I do think they're a very complete team with a lot of potential, and I think this is the playoff team, and I think you're crazy for putting them 4th. Yes, so that one was good because I feel like we both disagreed, and we managed to both be wrong.
We both had different expectations for the Raiders, and we met right smack in the middle. I mean, This team was a couple of swing losses away from actually being the worst team in the AFC West, and they're a couple swing wins away from being a playoff team. So this season for the Raiders could have gone either way. I think 7-9 felt appropriate. I think they're an intriguing team going forward, but I think some of the takes you had about the Raiders and how good they could be were right. And I think some of the takes I had about the Raiders, where I still feel like this roster might be, I said at the beginning of the year, might be a year or two away with all those young guys. I still feel like part of that's true. So I still feel like we're both kind of right about the Raiders, but also wrong because we made takes that weren't true.
Yeah, I think you were probably closer to being right about the Raiders because you did say they were a year away. And I think we both kind of agreed that there was a lot of question marks about the team. And it was just sort of how do we evaluate the question marks. I do think it's fair to say, though, the Broncos will also be mentioned on this list. But still, having them at fourth when they finished second, a bit of a miss there.
Yeah, you're right. So it's okay.
It's all right. We're getting through it. The top, not going to be a lot of great ones. All right. That was number 8. We're going on to number 7 here.
I was going back and forth on these two teams, and in the end, I said Ty goes to the quarterback. So I'm going to go with a third team. I'm going with the Tennessee Titans, who I think are going to regress a little bit this next season. They lost a few players off that team that were really effective last year. So I'm going to go with Tennessee Titans at the third best team in the division.
This is a wild take, I think, that Tennessee Titans third in the division. Yes, wild take, and ended up winning the division and making the playoffs. Kyle, defend yourself.
There's no defense. I mean, I decided to take the roadmap of I can overlook some deficiencies on the Texans to say, hey, well, they have the best quarterback in the division by far, and as it turns out, one of the best quarterbacks in the league, probably top 4 or 5 at this point, which is true. It was still true, but the deficiencies were way too much on that team that they were never going to be competitive. The thing is I said at the beginning of that podcast that I saw one playoff team out of there, which I really like the Colts. So I was good about the Colts. I just, the Titans performed better than I expected.
Yeah, exactly. And it really wasn't that you were high on the Texans. Both of us had the Texans missing the playoffs, which we got some heat at the time. We both nailed that. So it was more so you missed on the Titans. And in fairness, part of it was you were worried about the right tackle situation. And I was like, oh, Isaiah Wilson, he'll fill in fine. So but neither one of us.
Isaiah Wilson did very well.
Yeah, exactly. Looked like might be one of the all-time first-round busts. So not quite.
Yeah. So I mean, they turn it around. They're a good team. They're going to be a playoff team. It seems like for the next near future at least.
Yeah. All right. So the next 4 takes are you're gonna notice we're wearing the same outfits. This is all from the same podcast. But in fairness, it was the podcast where we did our whole predictions of who was gonna, it was the podcast where it was the AFC East. So the Patriots, and then we also had like our rankings of who was going to, go to the Super Bowl and everything like that. So let's get into number 6, the 6th worst take. Here we go. And then let's move on to the team that's going to finish second in the division. I already know what this is. Who do you have as your number 2 team?
The Buffalo Bills. I think that at their best, this could be the best defense in football. I think there's a very good chance it's the best defense in football. But the question, and I also really like their coach. I think McDermott's a top 10 coach in the league. The questions I do have is Josh Allen. Is Josh Allen going to be good enough? He hasn't beat the Patriots once in his career. And I think that he's at time. If you watch him on the right week, he looks awesome because he's so athletic and makes a bunch of plays. If you watch him on the wrong week, he's 10 of 26 for 110 yards and 2 picks. So I think that that's going to be the biggest question with the Bills. I think they have a complete roster other than, is this quarterback good enough to win you a lot of games? And he hasn't proven that he can beat New England, and I don't think he does it again this season. So I have the Bills at 2.
So this isn't a bet. You changed your mind since we did because about a month ago you were saying the Patriots were going to finish second and the Bills were going to win.
Well, they got Cam Newton,
and they lost half their team.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know what? We'll do then. This has been a very. I don't think we've disagreed this much on an episode yet. Okay. Well, we'll get into the Bills. I think this is a crazy take from you. That somehow Cam Newton is all of a sudden the complete savior. But listen, I will give you a chance. I'll hear you out. in our next segment. Yeah, and spoiler alert, in the next segment, Kyle did still wrong.
Yeah, everything I said about the Bills too was wrong too.
I know.
Maybe the best defense in football, which completely regressed this year. Josh Allen took this huge leap forward and was an MVP candidate. Everything about the Bills take was completely wrong. That's a bad one.
Yeah, that one was I think my favorite. I also just I've noticed I can come off as very mean in some of these, but I also feel like that one the right amount of meanness, I think, for me.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I will say, everything about that was wrong. I continue to say this about Josh Allen. This isn't a Bills fan saying "we told you so" thing. Nobody expected this leap from Josh Allen. Nobody expected his completion percentage to get 10% better over one offseason, which wasn't even a real offseason because of everything going on with COVID. So that is something we didn't expect. But obviously, you just had to look at the two rosters and say the Bills were better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also loved the we got Cam Newton. That was a great counterpoint.
That worked
in
out.
hindsight. Yeah, and again, these things all look bad in hindsight. Like that's and plus, trust me, I don't look great in some of these ones coming up, but they all look bad in hindsight.
Yeah. I mean, there's always going to be ones that we got to make a prediction about everything. It's hard.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and plus, like, you have to have strong opinions. You can't just come out here and say, like, I don't know. Like, you have to figure it out. So you have to make a decision, and sometimes you make wrong ones.
Yeah. So, all right, what's the next one we got?
Number 5. This is also, and by the way, we're both wearing hockey jerseys. It was not intentional. It just worked out that way.
Yeah, weren't we playing each other in the playoffs at that point? I think that's why we did it, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, okay.
We both thought,
We didn't plan it, but yeah.
Yeah. Number 5. So for the Super Bowl, I have Baltimore versus the Saints. I'm giving it to Baltimore. I think both these teams are great. I just think that the Saints, Baltimore does what they do better. They're greater at what they're great at, more so than the Saints. And I mean, we have seen Drew Brees kind of not played the best in postseason games recently. So I think it's fair to say Baltimore, although I could see that going either way. I'm going to take a guess. I think you also have Baltimore winning it over Seattle.
Yeah, so the big thing, it's my 2020 MVP prediction of Russell Wilson against the 2019 MVP Lamar Jackson. I would just love to see this game anyways. We could just make it happen. The reason why I had the Seahawks roll into the Super Bowl, I think, is because of the matchups that they have. 49ers would be a tough one for them, but if they play teams like the Saints and the Buccaneers, I just like that secondary to be able to get the job done. But the secondary doesn't really help them, I think, against Baltimore. And I think that's where that strength is kind of negated. And I think Baltimore wins the Super Bowl in that regard.
Yes, I also love the sort of these bonus rough takes that we'll give also of the Seattle great secondary, which again, we both thought going in. I'm not going to throw that one all on you. Just very fun. But yeah, clearly a miss by both of us here picking the Ravens, who didn't even make the Final Four.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the worst take.
No.
We definitely weren't the only ones picking the Baltimore Ravens to win a Super Bowl this year. Well, it remains to be seen what this team can do in the playoffs. I mean, we'll see how they can do it going forward, building around Lamar and building this team. They got to add a wide receiver.
Yeah, I also like how I do give a bonus shot to Drew Brees there.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you love that guy. Up until like week 5 this year, you were all on Drew, weren't you?
Well, I mean, Drew Brees is incredible. He just, his arm fell off. Let's move on. Let's go to number 4 now right here. And the 7th seed, I am giving to Denver.
I'm going to go with Denver as the 7th seed.
Yeah, a little bit short. We didn't have a very long intro thing there. But yeah, again, that's one of those. I think that might be my worst take. I don't know what I was like. I understood the logic, but we really bought into the Drew Lock hype going in.
Yeah, we were all on that. And then, the worst part about it is not only did he not play well as a quarterback, the NFL Films did their mic'd up segment for the end of the year. They released it I think 10 days ago at this point. So they did their mic'd up segment at the end of the year. There's 3 different instances where Drew Lock is on the sideline and he breaks a mask trying to put it on his face. And we thought this guy would be a good quarterback. He can't put a mask on. So, I mean, I feel really bad about that one. We thought he'd figure it out, and take the next level. He looked good at parts as a rookie, but they once they took the training wheels off, it did not look good.
Yeah, I also had Vic Fangio as a candidate for Coach of the Year, so I bought all in with Denver.
You know, the thing is that's so stupid is they're going to get a quarterback this year, and we're going to buy all in on this team again. I feel like the Broncos are the team that people never quit.
Yeah, no, they really are. The Broncos are like they're the Bucks before they got Tom Brady. They're the team that everyone keeps saying like, oh, look out for this team, and then they keep just missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm already all in on the Matt Ryan led Denver Broncos.
Yes, all right. We'll see Denver next year when we do our top 10 worst takes of 2021 for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, number 3 now, and this is the final hockey jersey worst take. Here we go. Josh Allen. Many people call him the white Cam Newton. He gets a 3 right here. I think he's a lower tier starter at this point in his career. And I would like to see he improved a lot from year 1 to year 2. He's going to have to keep improving, though, if the Bills are going to have a real chance.
So is this a guy who can beat good teams? I think that's the biggest question that the Bills have. And I can't say it enough. You know, the completion percentage, I think, is always going to look very, very bad for him. But is he going to be able to make enough plays to beat any of these good teams, which he hasn't really done yet?
Yeah, so again, we were both on it, and giving Josh Allen a 3 out of 10 when he ends up being got tied for second team All-Pro. Another no one saw it coming. I think it's hard to blame us too much, but at the same time, a miss is a miss, and clearly we both missed on that.
We could do a whole hour-long segment on our Josh Allen conversations from the offseason because we did the quarterback draft earlier in the offseason too. And I want to say, because it was controversial at the time, we had Josh Allen 25th or something like that.
Somewhere around it, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, he made us look stupid. I think he made a lot of people look stupid, though. He took a huge leap this year with Diggs.
Yeah, and it's so funny, right? Because and even the way I said it, I have it right here. The 25th was where he ended up on our draft. It's so funny the way I say it. Yeah, he improved a lot year 1 to year 2, but he's gonna have to improve a lot more. And then he improved a lot more.
Yeah, he really did. He was incredible this year. Give him all the credit for that. If we did the quarterback draft again, he'd be much higher.
Yeah, maybe even crack the top 20.
Yeah, maybe. We'll have to see.
Exactly. Yeah, great job. Okay, so 2 takes left. Number 2 is a Kyle take. Number 1 is both of us. This is one I completely forgot about. So I got to go here. This is talking about in our NFC North recap. This is what you had to say about who was going to win the division.
Oh, no. LaFleur did win some big games. Him and Rodgers did win big games throughout the season. But you look at the numbers, they were 15th in points scored. They were 9th in points against. And their expected wins last year were, actually under 10. They were 9.7 in expected win total, which is lower than their 13-3 record, obviously. So that's why I had them at number 2. I wasn't really sure that I don't think there's a scenario where this team to me wins a Super Bowl.
Yeah, well, they didn't win a Super Bowl. They did come close. That was the Packers. You gave them gave Minnesota the division lead over them. And in fairness, I do have to say, nothing you said was necessarily wrong, but just the Packers with the same team ended up winning the same amount of games.
Yeah, and Minnesota did not win the same amount of games.
No, yeah.
They lost too many pieces in that secondary that really hurt them, mainly at the cornerback spot, as we talked about throughout the season. But yeah, Packers pretty much stayed the same and, ended up just the same once again. So.
Right, yeah. Again, a miss, kind of understandable, but, it's fun to go back and look at these. Number 1, we know what it's going to be. It's the thumbnail image. You're going to see a New England Patriots thing on the bottom. That's because this was during our mock draft that I took the clip from where we ended up having him go 24th or whatever. So here's what we had to say about Justin Herbert.
I'm still not a huge fan of Herbert. I don't think in college, there's a lot of games in college that I watch and it's why would anybody want this guy? He seems very soft.
Okay, so let the record show Kyle desperately hopes that the Patriots find a way to get Justin Herbert here in the 2020 draft. Yeah, and just because I feel like people are going to comment because we've been talking about it, why I'm not a huge Herbert fan is I just feel like more often than not, when he has to make the tough throw, he doesn't. I just think his accuracy isn't great. Yes, he's soft, Kyle.
Yeah. Not only that, but my Wi-Fi was on fire during that time. What a time. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Herbert made a lot of people look stupid too. He was clearly viewed as the third quarterback in the draft, and there were people who didn't think he should have went 6 at that point.
Us included.
Us included, yeah. I mean, there was definite things at Oregon that didn't look promising with him, but a lot of the stuff he began to figure out as he went forward and as he got to the NFL. And I think a lot of it too is you look at his offensive coordinator at Oregon. I think he's at New Mexico doing a terrible job too. So maybe it's not all on him, but yeah, I mean, this is a completely different guy than what we saw in college.
It really was. And that's the kind of thing where it's hard for me. Like I even went back at a certain point during the season and watched his college tape, and I'm like, this is the same guy. Like, some people thought he was going to be great. Listen, like Chris Sims somehow nailed it. He nails it every year. I don't know how that guy figures it out, but for the most part, all of us mortal humans thought that he was going to be a bust, or at least a lot of us did. So give him credit for becoming a better player.
Yeah, he worked hard, and the thing was about him in college is that he had the intangibles. We all saw the intangibles, the arm strength, the mobility, that kind of thing. He had all of that. It's just, was it all going to be put together? Because it's a terrible example to bring up, but Drew Lock had the intangibles, as we talked about with him earlier. Jamarcus Russell had the intangibles. There's a lot that goes into being a good quarterback other than throwing the ball far.
Yeah, exactly. So again, those are our worst takes. We ripped the Band-Aid off, gone through it. We don't want to hide from, listen, we're going to have misses. We'll talk about our best takes for a bit too. Why not? I have a couple. Me predicting the Bucks to beat the Saints. I thought that I did a great job there of not necessarily just picking them to win, but also how I picked them to win. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, that was a good pick. 3 straight road games through the postseason, winning the Super Bowl. That's impressive.
Yeah. Also, you nailing Jamal Adams going to the Seahawks. That one was a great one.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to making up trades at the off the top of the head, that's definitely my specialty. That's right up my alley, baby.
Apparently, yeah, because you also had the Tua thing. I didn't even think about that one. So yeah, you're great. We were both high on Winfield, but you especially, Antoine Winfield, who ends up having a big impact for the Bucks. And we also picked the Cardinals to miss the playoffs, which I think a lot of people had them as playoff teams. And you did eventually change your mind after the Hail Murray. For the most part, beginning of the season, we both were saying, hey, let's not buy into the hype too much here.
Yeah. Are you going to throw my Browns one in there too? I get credit for that.
It's on here. It's on here. Yeah, okay, the Browns. Yeah, the Browns and the Colts. You nailed both of those.
Yeah. I mean that I'm definitely holding on to that Browns pick for the next few years. That's for sure.
Yeah, the Browns was going to be. I thought that was going to be one of our worst takes, but then I went back and listened to it, and I had them as a playoff contender. So I was in the ballpark with that. So I didn't put it on there.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And then going back to one of the ones you said earlier, I can't stress this enough because it still riled me up from last draft. I don't care about how athletic a guy is. If a guy like, Tyrann Mathieu before him and Antoine Winfield now is getting like 6 interceptions and 4 forced fumbles in a year in college, he just makes good football plays. Don't overthink it and just draft a player who makes good football plays. That's my advice to anybody listening.
Yes, and I've heard every NFL GM listen to this podcast, so we're doing great. I hope there. So. Yeah, yes. They should. It's a good podcast. We do our best.
Yeah, we try.
I have Matt Patricia on here because people were the Lions were another one of those like Broncos kind of dark horse. Like, could they make the playoffs? And we're like, who do they have as head coach? No, it's not happening.
Yeah. They that was a rough one that was a rough era for the Lions fans. Amongst the many rough eras of like the past 40 years, that might be one of the roughest.
Yeah, amazing to have a rough era from the Lions standards. That's really tough to do.
Yeah, they were not good.
No, we're not. I think both of us picking the Texans to miss the playoffs, I still have as a good take because we both we realized, okay, they made the playoffs the year before. People thought they could make it again. We got some criticism for that in the comments, and that was good. And also me predicting the Pats to miss the playoffs, the Patriots to miss the playoffs. I thought that was a good one because, again, it made sense, but they're the Patriots, so not a lot of people were doing that.
Yeah, yeah, you were right on that one. I think a lot of people were just buying into Belichick figures it out, but when he has no roster to figure out, there's nothing really you can do.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, players win games. All right, so that's our worst takes. Those are our best takes. Now I'm gonna move. Give the floor to you a bit. We're gonna have the most interesting teams heading into the off season. So since I gathered all this stuff, we sort of split up the research. You're gonna be giving the top 10. Why don't you explain what you're gonna be doing?
Yeah, so this is just 10 teams that I'm looking at basically, and like what's going to happen this offseason. I feel like these 10 teams are definitely going to drive the offseason into what our conversations are, how the league is shaped, and what happens going into, the fall of next season and into September. So I'm looking at these 10 teams to really drive the conversation, and that's where I'm going with these 10. Should I start at number 10 or should I start at number 1?
Well, first off, Bongdon Silver says, "Hey Jackson Hart," and then says, "Hey Kyle." But there's 2 hearts for you. Why you get an extra heart?
Because I got an extra exclamation point. That's
God.
because Team Kyle is obviously greater than Team Jackson.
Tragic. I wasn't paying attention to your question because of my hilarious joke. What did you say?
10. Should I start at 10 or number 1?
Let's start at 10. No, actually,
right.
Let's start at 1. Let's do it that way.
Number 1. All right. I almost left this team off because we've already talked about them so much, but they're obviously the biggest storyline of the offseason. And they'll continue to be the biggest storyline of the offseason, the Houston Texans. What is going to be left on this roster in August? Who is going to be on this roster in August? And the biggest question, where it seems like they're going to keep Deshaun Watson, who is going to be the quarterback here starting September for the first week of the season? That's why I got the Texans as easily the number 1 team of the offseason.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I feel like the Texans, though, a lot of what makes them interesting is just the Deshaun Watson piece. Like, I think there's not a ton interesting outside. I mean, I guess, they've already cut J.J. Watt. I guess seeing how they're going to try this rebuild could be interesting. But wouldn't the Texans...
rebuild with no draft picks?
Would it happen next year?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of interesting things about this. Will Fuller's a free agent, too. Does he come back? It's like, what is this team... I just wonder what this team's going to look... What is going to be left around Watson if they keep him?
Well, yeah, that's the interesting thing. It's like you never want to get rid of a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. He's so difficult to get someone like that on your team. But what do you do? I mean, are you just going to you went 4-12 last year? Do you try to go 4-12 again and get another good draft pick and then try to rebuild? Do you trade away some of your other talent and try to get draft picks that way? Or do you try to build through free agency? But they don't have that much money. They're in just an unbelievably difficult position. So that's why, while I would hate to trade Deshaun Watson, I still don't think they should. There is logic there.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really tough situation. I was looking at, so for these teams, I'm using Sport Track as my cap space analysis here. The Texans have about $10 million in cap room too to sign players. So there's not a lot that I really think about. I don't know how this team's going to look, but I think, it could be a massive selling spree to try and accumulate any sort of picks they can, but then you're just pissing off your quarterback even more.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe you just say like, "Hey, let's suck this year," and then we'll build from there. I don't know. It's definitely one of those. Usually, I always say when people will say, "Don't take that job," I kind of feel like there's 32 jobs. You got to take one. The Houston Texans, you can make a strong argument if you're a head coach can like Eric Bieniemy, for example, someone who's gotten thrown around. Like, it probably would have made sense for him to, if he got an offer from Houston, to say no thanks.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be a tough gig for the next few years. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Houston. Like I said, we've talked about them so much, we don't have to spend too much time on it. Go straight into number 2 here. This team is interesting to me. Once again, this is just my opinion, so you don't have to agree with me. This team at number 2 is interesting because I don't know what this roster is. They don't have cap space, and they have 2 quarterbacks, but I don't think they love either quarterback. And the fans definitely don't love one quarterback, especially the Philadelphia Eagles. What is going on here, and what is this team? That's my question about them.
Yeah, I find it interesting the way you view interesting things, because I feel like these are 2 teams that might be in some of the worst positions right now. But I guess that is interesting to some degree. Well, the good news is they're going to get 2 first-round picks from the Bears for Carson Wentz.
I mean, are they? Is that confirmed?
No, probably not. I mean, that's the reports. I doubt that that'll actually happen. But yeah, it's crazy. And you could even argue that, like, listen, there's a lot of what Hurts did that was really good. There was plenty of what Hurts did that made me say, I don't know if this guy's a starter. So, and again, he was in such a tough situation. It's hard to really blame him that much. But are you going to roll with Hurts? Are you going to try and fix Carson Wentz? They got a new coach that seems like he's under the Frank Reich coaching tree because they realized that Frank Reich was the guy, so they're trying to get the closest thing to Frank Reich. This is a bizarre situation, and again, another tough situation if you're a head coach or general manager.
Yeah. So, and then not to mention, so I was looking at Sport Trek as well. I don't know what their cuts or situations are like, but they have minus $41 million in cap space right now, according to Sport Trek. They have the second lowest in the league, just ahead of the Saints with 64 players signed. So not only do I think these quarterbacks create an interesting dilemma of do they try and move one of these guys, but with that sort of cap situation, this team seeming like they're not going to be good right now. They're not going to be good for the next couple of years. Are guys then that could really drive the offseason? Are guys like Fletcher Cox available? Are guys like Alshon Jeffrey, Zach Ertz available? There's some good, 30-year-old players on this team that are still valuable that probably aren't valuable for the Eagles and their plans for the future.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a very interesting point. I could see, I could see the Patriots trading for one of those guys.
Yeah, they've been rumored with Ertz for a while. I don't know if I don't know.
You don't think that makes sense to me?
I mean, it makes sense, but at the same time, like, for his salary cap hit, I don't know if I love Hurts. Plus, he always seems like he's hurt. Fletcher Cox seems like that'd be a big prize for me. If somebody could get Fletcher Cox, I think that'd be a huge move.
Yeah, that would be crazy. And again, teams don't always love to trade like that. But again, we got a new analytical guy in there who kind of probably knows it's a good decision. So maybe we could see a fire sale in Philadelphia.
Yeah. So that remains to be seen. But that's my number 2 team because I don't know what the hell's going on there. I don't know if it's going to be figured out this offseason even. My number 3 team, so had a couple bad teams there to start. Let's go to the good team here. And by good, I mean the very best right now, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who comes back to this team? Who's signed back on? And then who, we saw it at the end of the offseason with guys like Leonard Fournette and Gronkowski. Who are some of these like mid-tier free agents that might be saying, Tom Brady wins a lot of Super Bowls. Maybe I just go and see if I can win a Super Bowl real quick. J.J. Watt, anybody else there? Who is coming back to this team and who's being added on?
Yeah, I do think they're in a very interesting position. I think that, there's a chance that they could lose several key pieces. There is sort of a way, like I think that the real way Tampa Bay is probably going to handle this is sort of do what the Saints have done for so many years of, sign Shaq Barrett to a big deal, but backload it. Make it so that the cap hit isn't much the first year and it's a lot in like the 4th year and try to just backload it that way or like, same thing with the Levante David. I think that's what they'll probably try to do, but it is interesting. Like, will they get a Shaq Barrett? This is the guy who's, I think he's like 28 at this point. He wants a big payday, so he's probably going to go to wherever pays him the most money. He has 2 rings, and will Tampa Bay be able to sign him? And like you said, it feels like they're going to get some sort of name. Adrian Peterson came out and said he wanted to play for Tampa Bay. I'm not sure if that's going to help him much, but, guys want to play. And why wouldn't you? Tom Brady's there. Great weather. I know that you probably miss the Florida weather right now.
Yes.
There's plenty of reasons to want no state taxes. It makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot that makes sense about wanting to go to Tampa Bay. Never mind that they just won a Super Bowl. So
Right.
I was looking at their team too. So this team basically, it returns a lot of their starters, but they only have 44 players signed currently. They have one of the lowest in the league of currently signed players. They do bring back a bulk of their starters, which is a good thing. So as a Bucs fan, let me throw this scenario at you. So say as a Bucs fan, they do something like this is just a hypothetical. Say they franchise tag Levante David, work out a deal with Chris Godwin, and then have to replace essentially Barrett and Leonard Fournette. Is that a successful offseason to you?
I think in that scenario, I would probably well, you also have Antonio Brown in there. So are we signing Antonio Brown or not signing Antonio Brown? And Gronkowski, but I feel like Gronkowski's he'll sign for whatever.
Here's the thing. I think Gronkowski and Brown aren't going to net huge offers elsewhere. And I think they're just kind of along for the ride at this point. They're both in the twilight of their careers. They both love playing with Tom Brady, as they both said multiple times. I don't think Gronkowski's going anywhere. And I just don't see Brown netting the offers anywhere else that would make him want to leave Tampa Bay in that situation. So I do see those two coming back. So let's add that to that. So let's say it's a hypothetical of whether it's, let's say, David franchise tag, a long-term deal worked out for Godwin. That's a pretty good pay. And then Brown and Gronkowski on short deals.
Yeah, I think I would rather lose Godwin and keep Barrett, and I think that's what they would rather do as well. I think keeping, especially after how big of an impact Shaq Barrett just had in this Super Bowl, which again, it's weird because I just feel like having the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have so much great wide receiver depth that if they were to lose Godwin and have Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Scotty Miller, and Tyler Johnson as their top four guys, I think that makes way more sense than paying money to Godwin. I think sign David, and I actually don't think franchise tagging would be that beneficial. I think I would rather sign Lavonte David and just give him a backloaded contract, so that way that would save a bit more cap.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a fair idea. I think losing Godwin would hurt a little bit, but maybe with the full off season, it kind of works out for Tampa Bay and those receivers. Plus, I think Tyler Johnson's a guy who looks like he can be. It was his rookie year last year. I think he's going to be good for a number of years.
Yeah, exactly. And again, maybe this changes if JJ Watt says he'll play for $5 million. Maybe you take JJ. He won't play for $5, but like $10 million, maybe. Maybe you take JJ Watt and then you let Shaq Barrett walk. So it would also depend on who they can get. And I think for Fournette, yeah, it seems like he's probably just. I would imagine he's just going to take the biggest payday available, and I think good for him. But it seems like it's probably done in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that people are still going to pay him because of his age and his talent, obviously. This kind of felt like a prove it kind of year. So I kind of figured he was gone. But I was still high on Keyshawn Vaughn in college. I think he can still come in and be pretty good. And they can still add a bigger back to be and they still have Ronald Jones, who, really turned it around last year. So there's pieces in Tampa that they can be okay in the running game still.
Yeah. The problem with Ronald Jones is as good as he is as a runner, he can't block. He can't, he really is only good as a runner, which is the issue. Maybe, and they have a first round pick. It's a late first round pick, but that could be a good running back spot as well.
Well, I think Vaughn can fill that role, honestly. I still believed in the talent of Vaughn that he can fill that role because I think pass protection for a running back is the toughest thing to learn in the NFL. And I think not having an offseason probably hurt him in that regard. And we even saw with the Chiefs, too, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They were afraid to put him in pass blocking situations as well. So I think he can still pick up on some of that stuff and be good. Not to mention, James White's a free agent.
Oh, there you go.
Go to one of Brady's favorites there as, perfect timing, Darlande Bursneau. Sign James White. Maybe that's an option too. The perfect pass protecting receiving back. Yeah,
that would be a good one. I really do think that they just want someone who can pass protect and make catches even more so than just run the ball. So that the running game is interesting. Yeah, entire interesting team. And at the end of it, I was even thinking it's so weird. If Lavonte David left before this year, I would have been so upset. But now that he's won a ring, it's I want him to stay. But if he leaves, hey, at least you want a ring here. At this point, I almost feel like do whatever you want.
Yeah, that's the thing. And he can net one big salary, I think, still in his career. So does he do that, or does he say, I've given everything to Tampa, I want to stay here? I don't know. Yeah. It'll be interesting. So
yeah, I don't know. And it's, again, we're getting to the point where we're just speculating what these guys want. It's hard to really say. Let's move on. What's your next team?
Yeah, so we did your team at number 3. We're going to go for my crappy team at number 4. The New England Patriots have the highest amount of cap space according to Sport Track. They have a little over $68 million in cap space. This team is interesting because I feel like this is basically a clean slate. This team feels very let's just start over from the top. They have a ton of cap space. They have a ton of draft picks. They're going to get some compensatory picks too. This is a very interesting team, I think, that is going to be able to add some talent quickly and possibly, maybe if they find a decent quarterback, this team could possibly be pretty good in a hurry with the amount of talent that they can add, plus having the best coach in the league.
Yeah, I think that I want the Patriots to be good again because the league is better with a villain, and I think the Patriots have been sort of this great villain, even with Tom Brady with Tampa Bay. But it's again, it's hard for me to say because obviously I love Tom Brady now, and I never really hated him to begin with. But it seems like people were kind of mixed about do they love Brady, but kind of it's away from the Patriots. I think the Patriots being good helps. I think my biggest question with New England is what do they do at quarterback? Because I don't think they're going to go with Cam Newton or Jarrett Stidham in 2021.
Yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about this, too, is I've said this probably 10,000 times on this podcast throughout the season. Have we ever seen more available quarterbacks in an offseason?
We had a lot last year. Last year was a lot.
Yeah, just in general, though, I feel like we have, I've said before, there could be 6 first-round quarterbacks in this draft. You had Stafford already traded. There's rumors about Watson. There's rumors about Russell Wilson now, which came out of nowhere. There's rumors about, Matt Ryan, Jimmy Garoppolo. There's, what's going to happen with Gardner Minshew when Trevor Lawrence is drafted first overall. Where's Sam Darnold at if the Jets want to take a quarterback? There is a ton of quarterbacks, I feel like. Derek Carr's another one. I keep throwing him out at the top of my head. Derek Carr's another one who's been rumored too. Which of these quarterbacks is available and who can actually be moved? And are one of these teams going to pull the trigger?
Yeah, but I think my issue with that for the Patriots is like the Raiders aren't trading Derek Carr for draft picks. They might trade Derek Carr to get a upgrade, but I don't think they're going to trade Derek Carr for, a couple of mid-round first rounders from the Patriots. And same thing with like the 49ers. Like I think if you're going to trade Derek Carr, you kind of need that. I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like you're going to need almost an upgrade. And my concern is how does New England how did they just get the quarterback? Because yes, there's a lot available, but maybe Atlanta will draft a quarterback and look to rebuild. And you could take on, Matt Ryan has a bit of a tough contract, but that might be a move.
Yeah. Or, I've said it before, Gardner Minshew is another guy. I think there's plenty of quarterback opportunities available. And I think the Patriots are going to have their choice, or they could just go with a rookie and see if it pans out this season, And, I'm not necessarily sure that Derek Carr wouldn't be traded for draft picks. Because if the goal is to essentially upgrade at the position, you're not upgrading Derek Carr unless you're getting draft picks, basically. Because basically, here's my thought. Would they essentially trade Derek Carr to stockpile picks to then send to Houston for Deshaun Watson? Or if these rumors are true, send to Seattle for Russell Wilson? Would they do something like that and basically stockpile or trade Carr to stockpile picks and then move them on elsewhere?
Yeah, I can't imagine Seattle trades Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is going to stay. I think that just because there's reports that he was upset about, he wants more control. I think that doesn't mean that he wants to get traded. And I saw the cap, I think Seattle will have to pay like $30 million in dead cap this year if Russell Wilson gets traded. And that just seems like I just can't see that happening. But you bring up a good point with maybe the Watson thing, but I still feel like what would have to work for Watson for that move to work is there would have to be sort of a 3-team deal where, Carr goes to Patriots give picks to Houston, the Raiders give picks to Houston, and then Houston gives Watson to the Raiders.
Yeah. I mean, this is all speculation, but it's just an idea. I do think this team's interesting, and I feel like they have a lot of moves to make. Not to mention, Bill Belichick has masterminded getting the mid-tier free agent at $5 million instead of paying the superstar $15 million. This is basically what he does. There's going to be a lot of mid-tier free agents available because the cap's down basically, I think it was like $18 million this year total. So if the cap's down $18 million and all these teams are on a cap crunch and there's just going to be a plethora of these mid-tier guys rather than superstars, Bill Belichick's going to have his pick of the crop, basically. With all this cap space, the Patriots are in a position where they can really load up this roster quickly. And if maybe they're in a position where as long as they get replacement level quarterback, they could be a competitive football team because they didn't get replacement level quarterback last year. Could they get that this year and maybe have a competitive football team?
Yeah, I see some people in the comments saying Tyrod Taylor will be available. There's talk about Mariota. He's someone who could potentially be available. But I guess that's my concern really is I think the Patriots could be fine at building a roster. And probably, I mean, listen, no, I'm not going to question Belichick. You're absolutely right. He finds these guys that no one's heard of and turns them into stars consistently. And they're getting a lot of players. Like Dante Hightower should be back after opting out last year, so that should help. Although he is getting older, but things like that should help. I just the quarterback is the concerning thing because it feels like these best case scenarios are mid-tier quarterbacks. I don't think Derek Carr is going to happen, quite frankly. Someone says Andy Dalton, Jacoby Brissett, and maybe you draft a Mac Jones or something. But it's even to hide, even like the best quarterbacks aren't going to be available in the draft. I just think they're in a tough spot right here.
Yeah, I don't think Carr's going to get traded for the record. I just know he's been rumored.
Mm-hmm.
So I just brought his name up because of that. So, I mean, still, as Patriots fans are all kind of doom and gloom from this season, this team still went 7-9 with what I would consider bad quarterback play. And it's not anything against Cam Newton, but whatever shoulder injury he had just seems kind of permanent. He's not throwing ball. He's not getting a lot of elevation on balls. It's not sailing very well. So, could Jacoby Brissett, I know 11-5 was the playoff mark, but could a guy like Jacoby Brissett make this team 9-7, 10-6, and put it in a position?
I could see that. I think it's possible this could be a playoff team. I just think that's probably their right now to me, unless they pull a miracle out, which they've done before. It seems like this ceiling might be like a 1-win playoff team.
Yeah, unless Ian Book at pick 199 turns into the next Tom Brady, who knows?
Impossible. A 199 pick turning into Tom Brady.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So we'll move on with that one.
I was going to say one last thing is, could you see the Patriots never do this, but could you see them like just throwing a wheelbarrow full of money at like Allen Robinson or Chris Godwin if he's available? It's like some of these like just get a star receiver so you don't have to worry about trying to draft one.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what they do. They do that just really well all the time. Or now they have the position to kind of get those guys. But not only could they do that, as I was trying to say, is what they do is they could also get guys like Marvin Jones, Will Fuller, and all of a sudden this is a really good receiving core just off of getting those kind of guys. Or they can get the big guy and get a true number one guy with that kind of cap space.
Yeah, and you kind of saw it with even a Stephon Gilmore, paid him big money, but then he also elevated his play. Should be interesting. All right, let's move on.
Yep. All right, so the next one here for me is the Indianapolis Colts. They have the third and most amount of cap space here, according to Sport Track. They need a quarterback, though. They are number 3. They have $78 million in cap space. Does this team go all in with this defensive roster? Does this team go all in for it? The Indianapolis Colts interest me.
Yeah, the Colts are interesting. They're definitely that team that is probably shaking their head. Why didn't we offer Brady a contract? I don't think he goes there anyways, but just because the rivalry and the history. But that is definitely was a mistake. I think Rivers played well last year, but they could use another, at least Phillip Rivers tier player. And again, we're talking about the same sort of thing with Indianapolis of it's the same guys are going to kind of be available. How do you make that work? How do you go out and get somebody? They're tough. It's tough. It's a tough situation.
Well, and the tough thing about them too is, we looked at Tampa Bay last year as this is a team, as Bruce Arians put it, was one player away. It was a quarterback away, felt like, from winning a Super Bowl. If you look at teams in that scenario right now that might be one player away from being a Super Bowl contender, I mean, you probably think it's San Francisco and Indianapolis are those two rosters?
I mean, I think there's a good amount of rosters that are like, there's a lot of rosters that are one Tom Brady away from a Super Bowl, but I think that I think the Patriots could be thrown in there. There's probably some others that I'm thinking of. The Denver Broncos, I think, are another good one. So there's the quarterback position. It's the hardest position. Trust me, as a Bucs fan, I know. How many quarterbacks are recycled?
Yeah.
Everyone's trying to get a great quarterback, which makes it so much more difficult to find one.
Yeah. No, it's going to be tough. But the thing is so they could go all in this year and try and get a guy like Carson Wentz. I don't know if I love the move, but I understand it. I get it. So we'll see. But I think there's a real chance Aaron Rodgers is on the table next year. Unless they win a Super Bowl in Green Bay, I think there's a real chance Aaron Rodgers is on the table. And if he's looking at a situation where he can go to team with a nearly Super Bowl ready roster, wouldn't Indianapolis next year be pretty tantalizing for him?
Yeah, no, the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes next year could be really interesting. It kind of reminds me of like LeBron James when people know his contract is up and how some teams would just like try to clear up a bunch of cap space and hope. Like I think the Lakers basically said like let's get a bunch of cap space and hope we can lure LeBron. I think that you could see something similar happen where teams say like, okay, we'll try to be competitive this year, but like, let's sign some 1-year deals. Maybe we can make a run at 12 in Green Bay.
Yeah, it's completely perfect to the NBA. It's a perfect parallel. The Knicks do it every year and end up with like Amari Stoudemire. So
Uh-huh.
there's that. But I think there's a genuine play here next year for Aaron Rodgers for a lot of these teams. So are
Tampa
they
Bay?
thinking it? I mean, that'd be crazy. But is there a scenario where these teams look ahead and say, let's keep Jacoby Brissett and see what the asset is, and then maybe next year if it doesn't work out, we go all in for Aaron Rodgers. There's a lot of outplay with this team because they have a ton of cap space. This is obviously, a team with Andrew Luck would be probably a Super Bowl contender. It's a really talented team, and I think that they have a lot of moves to make too.
Yeah, the good point about the Andrew Luck thing. That really did kind of screw up this whole thing for Indianapolis. Yeah, because if you trade for Carson Wentz, now you're out of the Rodgers sweepstakes. So it'll be interesting to see what they do.
Yep. No doubt about it. So the next team I have on my list, I'm not sure if this team's going to be interesting, but I'm always intrigued by what they do. Just because nobody ignores the salary cap better than this team. That's the New Orleans Saints. I don't know what sort of voodoo magic in New Orleans they pull out, but this team ends up with, it just seems like a super talented roster every year, despite having no cap space ever. They never have cap space, but they always end up with the best roster in the league. So how does this team do it again now with potentially not Drew Brees?
Yeah, they could be in tough shape. I mean, they keep doing this, but it's never been this bad. They never had $100 million, over the cap at this point. They're really going to have to figure some stuff out. And it seems like, here's what I'll ask. Who's going to be the starting quarterback if they have to go with these two guys, Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston?
It's got to be Jameis, hasn't it?
No, I don't think so.
I don't see how Taysom's going to be able to do this for 16 games. He's going to fumble the ball like 100 times in 16 games.
Yes. No, but Sean Payton loves Hill. Sean Payton loves Taysom. Why would you give him all this money for the past couple years to then not have him be a starter when Brees finally retires?
I don't know, man. I just feel like if you're running it out there 45 times a game, and running those kind of plays, it's going to be figured out. I feel like teams are going to start to key in on it. Taysom Hill had one game where he looked great, I felt like, and it was a game against not a quarterback. Wasn't that the one game that he played really well in? Was against the Broncos non-quarterback?
I think he might have played well in one of the Falcons games as well, but he never really played a great team when he was the starter.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it works. Maybe they're probably going to try it. I just think if they want to win football games, I think Jameis should be the guy.
No, I think Jameis should be the guy. I'm just saying I don't think it's necessarily going to be him. And yeah, they're in an interesting position. Does New Orleans maybe get rid of some of their star players to save some cap as well? I mean, they're an interesting team. They went all in to try and win a championship, which I totally respect. That was the correct move. It just didn't work out. Sometimes it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, so currently Sport Track has them at minus $65 million in cap space. So is this a team that can maybe, I don't know how they do it. I mean, eventually the problem with this backloaded contract plan, as you mentioned with the Bucs, the problem with what they do with some of these contracts is eventually the bill's going to have to be paid. Mm-hmm. So do they find a way to finagle this with a lot of these contracts and get these players to agree to restructure these deals? Or is this bill essentially just going to have to be paid and they take it out?
Or do they restructure every contract, make them backloaded again, and just keep pushing it down the line?
They literally handle salary cap like the country handles their national debt. Basically, they just keep footing the bill till later. They're just going to keep pushing it off until it's like 2030. Like I don't know how they keep doing it.
I was going to say how I handle the dishes. It's like, oh, I have all these dishes. Maybe if I can just stack them, then I have more room so I can do it. I'll do the dishes tomorrow.
Yeah, that works too.
I have I think more like Nickelodeon style reference. You have more of like maybe a late night show reference.
Yeah, sure, that works. So we can move on from that one. The
Yes.
the Saints are an
How many are
interesting
left?
team. What's that?
How many
I
are
have
left?
4 teams left.
4 teams left. Gotcha.
We can power through a couple of these, I
Oh no,
think.
you're good. I just wanted to know because I lost track.
Okay, number 7 here for me is the Dallas Cowboys. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
I'm
is
so
this a
bored.
quick?
I don't care about the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone, they get shoved down our throats year after year. Whatever. They're boring. They're consistently mediocre. I don't care.
Well, here's the thing. I don't watch Undisputed, so I don't have to worry about the talking heads about it. I don't watch the show, so I can talk about the Cowboys as I please.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
is
Go
this?
ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Is this team going to be a quick rebuild? And this was a team up until Dak. The injuries kind of caved in the season. This was a team that had, you know, one of the best offenses in the league. They were averaging like 45 points a game to start the year. Prescott obviously got injured. Then there was like 3 or 4 other guys that had injuries. The offensive line. There's a lot about this team that got hurt. So could this team turn it around and say, hey, we got a competitive offense. We can be competitive quickly. Or is this a team that is going to be a long, slow rebuild?
I had an interesting thought. If Dak Prescott does hit the open market, how much would you be willing to pay as a Patriots fan? I mean, not you personally, but how much cap space would you be
$42
okay
million
with
dollars
him?
a year. I would pay 42 a year for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
I think that's
Prescott's
fair.
definitely worth it. I think if I'm getting a top 10 to 12 quarterback for that kind of price, I'm getting a steal because quarterback prices are always going to go up. They're always going to be more expensive. I think 42 for 4 years is definitely worth it for a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's understandable for the Patriots situation of they know they can, get some cheap guys in the other positions. So I think that that's absolutely understandable.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I mean, I think
back to
there's
the
a lot of
Cowboys. I was going to say back to the Cowboys. I just feel like they still have Mike McCarthy. Like it feels like the Detroit Lions from last year. It's like I just how am I supposed to have faith in the guy who went 4-12 with Aaron Rodgers the last in Green Bay and then really struggled this year?
yeah. I mean, that's true. I don't think he's Matt Patricia bad though.
No, but it just I can't have faith in a quarterback who hasn't been good in in the past 3. Even with Dak when he was a starter, they kept losing games. Like I don't buy if you have to have at least a decent coach to have success in the NFL, and I don't think he's that.
Yeah. With a healthy team, is this the best team in the NFC East? Does it matter?
No, I think Washington's better, and I think the Giants are better.
Interesting. The Giants have some pieces they got to add, though. So, yeah, I mean,
They do.
I'm interested in the Cowboys. I think that they can be a good team, but they got to address that defense badly. That's going to be a big thing. And they have $27 million in cap space, which obviously a lot of that is going to go to Dak. So I don't know how they plan on addressing that defense, but they got to hit on a few picks on that side of the ball.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll say about them is they have been good at drafting. So yeah, especially in the first round. So that's something that they but then again, part of it is like they get like a Leighton Vander Esch, and then who's good, but then Cowboys fans hype him up to be like the best player ever. And so that it's like
Yeah.
the Cowboys fan base works against Dallas, where you have to like overpay for your own guys because they love they love their players so much.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I don't know. We'll see what happens with them. We can move on here. I've lumped a few teams together in this one because I find them all interesting.
Okay.
As we talked about in our worst takes, we had strong opinions about this division. The other AFC West teams. So I'm talking about the Broncos. I'm talking about the Chargers, and I'm talking about the Raiders.
Gotcha.
So these 3 teams, you have the Broncos and the Chargers, who are right next to each other. The Broncos have about $39 million in cap space on 55 players. The Chargers have $33 million in cap space on 45 players. So they got some pieces to add. And you got the Raiders, who don't have a lot of cap space, but of the 3 teams are probably the most complete package. They got to get better on defense quickly. But can any of these teams really start to challenge the Chiefs?
Yeah, I think they all potentially could. Again, Denver's another team where they feel like they are a couple offensive line pieces and a quarterback away. But again, it's easier said than done to do that. They could be a good Matt Ryan team, I think, for sure. I think the Chargers, they obviously have their quarterback. They need to work on their line, but they could end up being a solid team. And the Raiders, they really need a defensive coordinator, I think. So they need defense, and they have their defensive coordinator, but like they needed better defensive coaching. So these teams all kind of feel like one piece away. The question is just it's not so. It's easier said than done. But I wouldn't be shocked if any of them make the playoffs next year.
Yeah. And at the same time, wouldn't you? I mean, right now, looking at these rosters, there's still a long off season ahead. Would you be shocked if any of these teams miss the playoffs again?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that there's a huge degree of variability with all three of these teams that I think could change. I pray to whatever being you believe in that Derwin James is healthy next year. I just want to see him back on the football field. He's so fun to watch. So yeah, I mean, I just hope that I hope that he's healthy. I think the Chargers can be really competitive. We've talked about our love for the Broncos and their roster. And is it all the coaching on the Raiders? Like, do they just need to add better players too? Is it that simple?
Maybe it's hard because it's like a lot of the guys are like young players in the backfield. They're going to get Richard Sherman. Write that down right now. That just seems like it makes too much sense. The Richard Sherman contract. They need a veteran leader. He is someone who can still produce. Like and you know, if I remember correctly, I think he's from that area. So that just seems like, you know, following in his former teammate Marshawn Lynch's footsteps, ending his career. Well, you know, I guess they're not in Oakland anymore, but, you know, going to the Raiders.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely intrigued with some of the talent of these young players. Don't get me wrong, but like, I still want to see better play out of, you know, Trayvon Mullen and Jonathan Abram, who I feel like have all the potential in the world, but are borderline psychopaths sometimes with the penalties they commit. You know, they've just got to get better play out of a lot of guys, I think. And, you know, I don't know if we'll see that this year. I think that's something that they might have to address here. I think Sherman would be a great option. But yeah, I mean, I want to see some better talent on this defensive side. I don't want them to just say, oh, better coaching, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think the reason why I talk about coaching, though, is I feel like they have a real discipline problem. And maybe that's just who they all are as people. But usually when it's like that widespread, it's usually a coaching issue. And you know what? Nobody knows how to not commit penalties more than Richard Sherman. He never would hold on for the jersey for a second too long.
You're right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, get back to the Legion of Boom days when that was kind of their strategy. Yeah. Okay. So did that count as, was that all of them, or do you still have more left?
I still have more left. I lumped them all together as number 7 because I feel like the narrative was the same. I'm sorry, I cheated here. So
no, it's good. It's good.
Actually, that was number 8. Sorry. So number 9.
Oh my God.
2 teams here. So I have 2 teams lumped together again. The first team was fantastic last year, suffered 1,000 injuries, and the other team was right on the precipice, it seemed like, of making the Super Bowl this year, but fell completely flat in the AFC Championship game. The San Francisco 49ers and the Buffalo Bills. How these 2 teams fit together, I don't really know, but I wanted to make sure they were both on my interesting offseason teams list. How do these teams?
You could have just done a top 15 list if you wanted to keep adding more teams.
I didn't want to cheat, but it's okay. So Buffalo Bills, how did they hit the next level? And can the 49ers bounce back?
Yeah, I think the 49ers are interesting because I do think their real question is the quarterback position. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is fine. Like, I don't think he's a big issue. So I don't get why this is all of a sudden something there. And for the Buffalo Bills, I guess the question is, how does Buffalo go to the next level? What do they have to improve on? I think probably some defensive pieces. So, yeah, I mean, I think both these teams just need some small upgrades and they'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what Buffalo can do because I feel like they're one like really solid edge rusher. They don't have cap space is the problem, but I feel like they're one really good edge rusher away from being a really dominant team because they were obviously very good this year, but it just felt like even as talented as that secondary is, sometimes it was just like there was no pressure, so these guys had all day to throw on them. So I feel like this team might be one really good edge rusher away from being a really good team.
Yeah, see, in the chat, J.J. Watt to the Bills, that's been rumored. That would make sense. They could, you know, figure out the way to get the money to work, and J.J. Watt, I feel like that would be a good piece there.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And then do you think San Francisco actually needs any upgrades?
It's hard to say. I mean, you could always find upgrades on the offensive line. So there's something there, and maybe the quarterback. But I think that's why people keep rumoring the quarterback because that's really all they need is probably depth because half their team gets injured every year.
Yeah, that's true. So Those are two interesting teams to me. Like I said, I want to make sure I had all these teams together, which is why number 10 is also two teams lumped together. But these two teams are actually connected.
Okay.
So this is two teams that, if you said 5 years ago, 6 years ago, even, these two teams could be potentially contenders in the AFC. I would have thought, wow, they must have found a superstar in the first round at quarterback. They didn't really find superstars, but these two teams feel like they're on the precipice of being really elite teams and at the high end of the AFC. That's the Cleveland Browns and the Miami Dolphins. So can these two teams who have a decent amount of cap space again add to this rosters that are starting to look really good and look like contenders in the AFC after years of being kind of incomplete?
Yeah, I mean, they're both kind of interesting, and just the fact that like what they need is clearly obvious, just opposite sides of the ball. Cleveland needs to work on their defense. Miami needs to work on their offense, specifically their offensive line, and of course, there is the Tua trade talk conversation. So there's intrigue on both of these teams, and I think they have the cap space. But one of the issues with cap space that doesn't get really talked about a ton is it's great that you have the space, and people always like to say, "Oh, I'd love to use that use 17 million on a elite offensive lineman." There's not always elite offensive linemen available. There's not always the perfect pieces you need. So that's where the intrigue comes in.
Yeah. And I know it's a long way to the NFL draft. The Dolphins are an interesting draft team to me because there's some good offensive linemen there, and there's also Devontae Smith. And I feel like that's their two biggest needs is they add an elite receiver and they add some linemen. So the question is, do they go veteran offensive lineman and add a guy like Smith? Or do they try and add some veteran receivers to help Tua and then maybe take a chance on some rookie offensive linemen? I think the Dolphins are interesting in that book.
Yeah, I'll say this. I think that, and I don't think Tua is a bust, but I made a video on Zach Wilson. It's going to be posted right after this, so be on the lookout for that. If Lawrence is 1 and Fields is 2, I take Zach Wilson 3. I think he's really good. So I don't think it's a horrible decision to do that either. Like I think there is an opportunity for an upgrade at quarterback as well. So I think there's a ton of intrigue there with the 3rd overall pick in the draft.
Are you in on the Zach Wilson could actually go number 2 hype?
See, I haven't really studied Fields tape yet, so it's hard for me to really say. But I mean, he's the only reason I'm not saying he could be a number 1 overall pick is because obviously Lawrence is amazing, but like Wilson's potential, I think, is as good as anybody's. I think he's great.
Wilson's interesting to me because he has obviously the talent, but he was kind of a middling college starter, and because of what happened with COVID this year, like BYU was playing a lot of borderline Division I teams this year. So I have some questions about that. I'd have to look at him a little more because I'll be honest, I didn't watch a ton of BYU games this year. So I have to look at it a little more. It'll be interesting. Back to these two teams, but yeah, I think the Dolphins can go in probably 10 different directions, but I still feel like they're so close to being a really good football team that whatever direction they go in could be really beneficial for them because I think they're so close. And then the Browns, as 509 Adventures here brings up, not only do they have some cap space, but if they want to add more pieces, Odell Beckham looks like a great trade chip to kind of dangle there.
It's interesting. It's very interesting because, I mean, and again, I think that him being a bad teammate or whatever is overblown, but they were better without him too. Like that's an undeniable fact. So there is something. Their offense is good. And their offense is great even without Beckham. So maybe trade him, get a defensive player. It would make sense. So Michael Mart, I'm not sure if you're ready to move on. I'm surprised the Jets weren't on this list. Hella cap space, the 2nd pick, and a new coach. Yeah, I'm a little surprised like the Jets and the Jaguars didn't make this list.
Listen, I'm interested in those teams for the future. I think that they could build and be great teams, but I'm not really interested to see this team build like a 4-12 team next year. Either one of these teams, because I think that's kind of what they're still going to be for the next couple of years. I think it's a long rebuild, and I'm curious for the future. But the thing is, I feel like a lot of these teams have trade chips, things that they can do, and things they can like make some serious moves. I think the Jaguars are just kind of do their thing personally. I think they're gonna draft Lawrence and then let's say, hey, we're gonna build this defense up and try and make this a competitive football team for 2 or 3 years from now. I don't think the Jaguars are gonna make any groundbreaking moves.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like, what are the Jaguars? What's their wild move of the offseason going to be? Are they going to sign a good young player? Like, there's not much there. So, yeah, good list. Good list of your top 15 most interesting teams heading into the offseason.
Top 10, but really 15. But yeah, yeah, I mean, it's going to be fun. Looking forward to off season and, ready for football season already.
Yeah, all right. Well, before we go, we're going to be back here Sunday next week. Sunday works for you, right, Kyle?
Sunday works for me.
Yes.
Sorry, I had to take off for Valentine's Day.
It's all good. Yeah, Sunday next week is where we're going to be back 9 o'clock. Stay on the lookout for that. We'll have new segments planned. And Kyle, let them know where they can find you before we go.
Yeah, follow us on Twitter. That's at by Kyle Gronin, BYKYLEGRONDIN, at by Kyle Gronin. You can find him at Jackson Kruger. And you can find us at On the Sideline JK for any show updates. We'll post there to the Twitter account. That's at On the Sideline JK on Twitter. Make sure to follow us and then make sure to subscribe to the channel.
Yes, all right. And thank you to everyone for watching. We appreciate it. And until next time, have a good one.